Hello, and welcome back to Sleeping Gift. Tonight, allow me to share a story titled The Secret Concert of the Moonlight Garden. Before we go any further, take a slow, gentle breath in. Let the quiet air fill your chest. Then exhale softly. Release every burden you've been carrying. Allow your imagination to gently guide you into this story. Now, let us begin the tale. In a quiet village where the houses had friendly, glowing windows and gardens stretched like velvet blankets under the sky, there existed a secret known only to those who listened with their hearts, not just their ears. Every full moon, when the silver coin of night rose high above the chimney tops, a gentle transformation would begin in a particular backyard, where old roses slept and lavender breathed its sweet dreams into the air. The first sign was always a soft, shimmering light that seemed to rise from the dew-kissed grass, a light that carried the cool, gentle touch of moonlight, woven with the warmth of earth magic. Then, from the small, mossy pond near the old willow tree, a figure would emerge, the Conductor Frog, his coat as dark as the velvet night, but dotted with iridescent specks like captured starlight. His eyes were kind and knowing, two pools of calm reflecting the moon itself, and in his webbed hand he held a slender reed baton that glowed with a soft blue light. He would hop gracefully to a little mound topped with a smooth, flat stone, his podium, and clear his throat with a gentle, melodic ribbit that seemed to tune the very air. As if summoned by this signal, the crickets would begin to gather from their hiding places beneath ferns, from within the curls of fallen leaves, and from the cozy shadows of the flower beds. They came not as ordinary insects, but as musicians, each carrying a tiny instrument that sparkled with dew and moonlight. Violins carved from hollow thorns, cellos made of walnut shells, flutes fashioned from slender grass stems. The orchestra assembled in semicircles around the podium, tuning their instruments with soft chirps and hums that blended into a whispering, anticipatory haze. Then, the night wind would arrive, slipping through the branches of the willow, dancing across the tops of the sleeping flowers, gathering in the quiet corners of the garden to form the choir. You couldn't see the choir members, but you could feel them. A gentle presence like a cool hand on a warm brow, a soft sigh of contentment, the tender rustle of comfort moving through leaves. When all were assembled, the Conductor Frog would raise his glowing baton, and a deep, profound silence would fall, a silence that felt like a held breath, soft and full of promise. And then, with the most delicate downward sweep of his baton, the music would begin.
The opening notes were always the crickets, a gentle, rhythmic chirping that started slow and steady, like a heartbeat made audible, comforting and constant. The violin crickets joined next, their melodies weaving through the rhythm like silver threads through dark fabric, creating patterns of sound that shimmered and danced. Each note from their tiny instruments was a pearl of sound, perfectly formed and glowing with its own inner light, floating up to join the stars in their slow, celestial dance. The melodies were simple at first, gentle, rising scales that mimicked the climbing moon, soft, descending arpeggios like falling petals, repeated motifs that felt familiar, like a remembered lullaby from long ago. The cello crickets provided the depth, their rich, vibrating tones resonating through the soil, up through the roots of the sleeping flowers, into the very foundations of the nearby houses. These deeper notes weren't heard so much as felt, a gentle vibration that traveled through slippers and up tired legs, untying knots of tension, softening stiff muscles, easing the weariness from bones. The flute crickets added the airy elements,
their breathy, whispering notes twirling like autumn leaves caught in a gentle updraft, spinning slowly downward in graceful, sleepy spirals. Together, the cricket orchestra created a tapestry of sound that wrapped around listeners like a musical blanket, warm, soft, and infinitely comforting. The tempo was always andante, a walking pace, but the walk was through a dream meadow with no urgency, no destination except peace itself. The key was always a gentle major key, but softened with modal shifts that gave the music a timeless quality, as if it had been playing since the world began and would continue long after all listeners had drifted to sleep. Occasionally, a solo cricket would emerge from the ensemble, playing a brief, sweet phrase that seemed to speak directly to each listener's secret thoughts, assuring them that all was well, all was safe, all was as it should be. These solo passages felt like personal messages, a musical whisper saying, "Rest now, let go, you are watched over, dreams await." The orchestra never played loudly. Their music was always at the volume of a mother's humming to her child, or the sound of rain on a distant roof, present and comforting, but never demanding attention. As the cricket movement continued, listeners would find their breathing beginning to synchronize with the rhythm, in with the rising scales, out with the falling ones, deeper and slower with each phrase. Shoulders that had been hunched with the day's burdens would begin to relax, sliding downward like sand settling in still water. Faces would soften, the tiny muscles around eyes and mouths letting go of their constant, unnoticed tension, smoothing into expressions of serene calm. Even thoughts, which had been chasing each other like restless squirrels, would begin to slow their frantic pace, settling into the gentle current of the music, carried along without effort or struggle. The cricket movement typically lasts as long as it takes for the moon to travel the width of 3 branches on the old willow tree, time enough for all the day's hurry to dissolve, but not so long as to become monotonous. Just as listeners reached that perfect state of relaxed awareness, not yet asleep, but floating gently toward it, the conductor frog would give a subtle signal, and the cricket music would begin to soften, fading to a whisper.
As the cricket instruments faded to the barest shimmer of sound, the conductor frog would turn to his left, where the night wind gathered in respectful silence. With a gentle gesture of his baton, a circular motion, like stirring starlight into milk, he would invite the wind choir to begin their portion of the concert. The first voice was always the lowest wind, the one that moved through the willow's weeping branches, creating a soft, humming bass note that vibrated at the very edge of hearing. This foundational sound was like the earth itself breathing, a deep, slow exhalation that seemed to come from the world's very core, steadying everything it touched. Then the middle winds would join, the breezes that played in the rose bushes, rustling leaves with a sound like distant, gentle rainfall, or like the turning of pages in a beloved, well-worn book. These winds created harmonies that shifted slowly, like clouds drifting across the moon, changes so gradual you wouldn't notice them happening, only that the sound had become even more peaceful than before. Last came the highest winds, the ones that barely touched the tips of the tallest grasses, making them whisper secrets to the watching stars. These created the melodies, though they were melodies of feeling rather than distinct notes, rising and falling sighs that express what words cannot. Comfort, safety, rest, surrender. The wind choir never sang words, yet listeners would swear they heard fragments of half-remembered lullabies from childhood, or the comforting nonsense syllables apparent murmurs to a sleepy child. Sometimes the winds would pass through different parts of the garden, changing their timbre as they went,
softening through the lavender, sweetening through the honeysuckle, cooling through the mint patch. These variations in texture wove through the music like different threads in a tapestry, creating subtle patterns that kept the ear interested but never startled, engaged but never overwhelmed. The wind choir had a particular effect on listeners' minds. Their ethereal sounds seemed to lift worries right out of thoughts, carrying them up and away like dandelion seeds on a gentle breeze. Memories of the day would soften at the edges, losing their sharpness, becoming more like dreams already, distant, harmless, fading. Plans for tomorrow would unclench their grip on the mind, settling into a gentle order that felt manageable, distant, not worth worrying about in this quiet moment. The wind music also seemed to cool what was too warm, heated cheeks from rushing, fevered thoughts from overworking, the residual warmth of the day's sun stored in skin and hair. And it warmed what was too cool, the cold places in the heart that felt alone, the chilly toes at the end of the bed, the cool sheets that slowly took on the body's warmth as relaxation deepened. Listeners would find their eyelids growing heavy, not with exhaustion, but with a pleasant, welcoming weight, like velvet curtains being drawn slowly across the windows of consciousness. Breathing would become even deeper, following the slow swell and ebb of the wind's harmonies, as regular and inevitable as ocean tides on a calm night. Muscles that had been merely relaxed now seemed to melt completely, becoming one with the mattress, the chair, the sofa, whatever surface supported the listener's body. The wind choir's movement lasted as long as it takes for the moon to cast the shadow of the garden gate across the entire lawn, a measured, graceful passage of time that felt infinite yet perfectly contained. As this movement approached its conclusion, the winds would begin to separate their voices, each bidding farewell in its own register, the high winds fading first, then the middle, until only the deep, grounding hum of the bass wind remained. And then, with a final, soft exhalation that seemed to say, "All is well," even that deepest note would fade into silence.
In the profound quiet that followed the wind choir's departure, a magical thing would happen. The cricket orchestra and wind choir would join together for the final movement. The conductor frog, with a look of deep satisfaction on his kindly face, would raise both arms, baton glowing brighter now, and bring them together in a graceful, embracing gesture. And from this unity would blossom the most beautiful music of all, a harmony of earth and air, of solid and ethereal, of the tangible and the invisible. The crickets played with even more tenderness than before, their notes now cradled and carried by the supporting breath of the winds. The winds sang with more definition, their vague melodies given gentle structure by the crickets' rhythms and harmonies. Together, they created something entirely new, music that seemed to exist in the space between waking and dreaming, a bridge made of sound that carried listeners gently from one state to the other. This unified music had colors in it, soft blues and silvers, with occasional washes of gentle violet where the deepest cello notes met the highest wind sighs. It had textures too, the velvety smoothness of the winds brushing against the slightly grainy, warm texture of the cricket strings, creating a sensation that was both heard and felt on the skin. Listeners in their beds would begin to feel a gentle floating sensation, as if their bodies were becoming lighter, buoyed up by the music like leaves on a peaceful pond. The boundaries between self and sound would soften. Were they hearing the music, or was the music hearing them? Were they listening, or were they part of what was being listened to? This dissolution of boundaries was deeply comforting, as it gently released the lonely feeling of being a separate self in a separate body, and replaced it with a sense of gentle belonging to the night itself.
The music in this movement would often echo the sounds of nature's own lullabies, the rhythm of a mother's heartbeat as heard from the womb, the soft shushing of ocean waves on a distant shore, the patter of gentle rain on a roof. These subconscious echoes triggered deep memories of safety and comfort, cellular memories of being protected, watched over, cherished. As the music continued, it would begin to interact with the moonlight in visible ways. Sparkles of sound light would rise from the instruments, dancing with moonbeams in intricate, sleepy patterns above the garden. These visual elements, though subtle, added another layer to the experience for those whose eyes were still slightly open, gentle, shifting patterns that tired eyes could follow into dreams. The tempo of this final movement was always slower than a resting heartbeat, encouraging the body's own rhythms to match its peaceful pace. Melodies would repeat with slight variations, creating a sense of gentle predictability that reassured the subconscious that nothing unexpected would occur, no surprises would startle, all was following a peaceful, ordained pattern. Occasionally, a firefly or two would join the concert, their flashes synchronizing with certain musical phrases, adding tiny exclamation points of light to particularly beautiful passages. The old roses in the garden, though asleep, would sometimes release an extra wave of fragrance at certain musical cues, as if sighing in their sleep at the beauty of it all. Even the household pets would be affected. Cats would purr in time with the cello line, dogs would sigh and twitch their paws in dream runs through musical meadows, caged birds would tuck their heads under wings with soft, contented chirps. Listeners would now be in that precious state just before sleep, conscious enough to appreciate the beauty, but detached enough from daytime thinking to experience it purely, without analysis or categorization.
Thoughts would be like clouds on a still day, drifting through occasionally, but with no wind to hurry them along, eventually dissipating into the blue sky of quiet mind. Breathing would be so slow and deep that each breath felt like a complete cycle, a tiny life unto itself, born, lived, and released in perfect peace. The body would feel perfectly arranged, every part supported, every muscle at rest, every joint at ease, as if the music itself was a skilled chiropractor of the soul, gently aligning everything into harmonious balance. Emotions would settle into a gentle, quiet joy, not excitement or happiness that might keep one awake, but a deep, still contentment, like a mountain lake at dawn, perfectly reflecting the peace of the sky. Time would lose its meaning entirely. The music existed in an eternal now, and listeners would float in this timeless space, unburdened by yesterday or tomorrow, existing purely in this peaceful moment. All beautiful things must eventually draw to a close, and so it was with the secret concert. But its ending was as gentle as its beginning, a seamless transition rather than a cessation. The Conductor Frog, sensing that his listeners had reached the very threshold of dreams, would begin to lower his baton in slow, gradual increments. As he did so, the cricket musicians would begin to play more softly, their notes becoming like echoes of themselves, faint but still present. The wind choir would reduce their numbers gradually, voices dropping out one by one until only a single sustained note remained, the gentlest possible breath of air moving through the garden. The melodies would simplify, returning to the very first themes heard at the concert's opening, creating a satisfying circularity that felt complete and whole. The rhythm would slow even further until each beat felt like a soft tap on the door of dreams, a polite, patient knocking that would never startle, only invite. Listeners would find themselves on that delicious cusp, still technically awake, but with dreams already beginning to weave themselves into the fabric of the music. Colors from the music would begin to morph into dream images, silver notes becoming silver paths through sleeping forests, blue harmonies becoming cool streams in quiet valleys, golden undertones becoming sunlight filtering through dream canopies. The final minute of the concert was always the same 4 phrases, repeated with infinitesimal softening each time, a musical instruction for sleep, a pattern so gentle and predictable that the mind could release its final hold on wakefulness. On the very last repetition, the crickets would play only the first note of each phrase, leaving the rest to the imagination. The wind would provide only the ghost of a harmony, more memory than sound. And the conductor frog would lower his baton completely, its light dimming to a soft glow that matched the moonlight now bathing his podium. In the silence that followed, a silence that felt like a held blessing, he would bow deeply to his musicians, to the garden, to the moon, and to all the sleeping listeners in the nearby houses. The crickets would bow back, their tiny instruments disappearing as they prepared to return to their ordinary insect forms and duties. The wind would offer one final, barely perceptible caress to every leaf and petal in the garden, a farewell touch that felt like a kiss on the forehead from the night itself. Then, as quietly as they had come, the musicians would depart, the crickets hopping, crawling, or flying back to their homes in the garden's hidden places. The wind choir would disperse, some members traveling to other gardens to continue their nightly work of soothing the world, others rising up to play among the stars. The conductor frog would linger for just a moment, surveying his domain with satisfaction, watching as the last sparkles of musical magic settled like dew on the grass. Then, with a soft, contented ribbit that was the final punctuation to the night's symphony, he would hop back to his pond, slipping beneath the water with barely a ripple. The garden would return to its ordinary nighttime appearance, though those with sensitive hearts might notice that the moonlight seemed softer there, the shadows more comforting, the air sweeter than in other places.
In the houses surrounding the garden, the listeners would now be fully asleep, but their sleep was special, deeper, sweeter, and more restorative than ordinary sleep. Their dreams would be infused with the music they had heard, dreams of gentle landscapes, of flying with slow, graceful wing beats, of floating down peaceful rivers on boats made of moonlight. The dreams never contained fear or anxiety. They were the dreams that heal rather than process, that soothe rather than work through, that bless rather than challenge. Faces on pillows would show soft smiles or expressions of profound peace, the body's unconscious response to the soul's contentment. Breathing would remain deep and regular throughout the night, the rhythm established by the music persisting in the body's memory for hours. Tossing and turning, that restless nighttime dance, would be completely absent, each sleeper resting as still as a stone at the bottom of a peaceful pond, but far more alive. The benefits of the concert would extend beyond the night itself. Listeners would wake the next morning feeling unusually refreshed, as if they had slept for twice as long as they actually had. There would be a lingering calm that carried through the morning, a patience with the day's small annoyances, a gentleness in interactions with others. Some would even hum fragments of melodies they couldn't quite remember, feeling a vague sense of having been part of something beautiful and sacred in the night. Children who had listened would often draw pictures the next day of frogs conducting orchestras or of musical notes dancing with moonbeams, though they would think they had simply imagined these things. Adults would find solutions to problems that had vexed them the day before, arriving suddenly in their minds with the morning tea, gifts from the uncluttered space the music had created in their minds. Even the garden itself would show effects. Flowers would bloom more brilliantly, vegetables would grow a little plumper, and the air would hum with a subtle vitality that bees and butterflies particularly loved. The secret of the concerts was never explicitly discussed among the villagers, but there was an unspoken understanding that certain nights were special, and that sleep on those nights was particularly sweet. People would remark the next day about how well they had slept, about beautiful dreams they couldn't quite recall, about a sense of peace that lingered like the scent of rain on dry earth. They would look toward the garden with unconscious gratitude, though they couldn't have said why it drew their eyes, or why looking at it made them take a deeper, more satisfying breath. And though the concert was over, its echoes lingered in hidden ways, in the particularly melodic chirping of certain crickets during the day, in the way the wind sometimes sounded like distant singing in the willow tree, in the extra shine on the pond where the Conductor Frog made his home. The memory of the music would fade from conscious awareness by midday, but it left behind a residue of calm in the nervous system, a resetting of the internal rhythms toward peace. This residual effect was perhaps the concert's greatest gift, not just the peaceful night, but a more peaceful day following it, and a memory in the body of how complete relaxation felt. Sometimes during particularly stressful days, a listener could close their eyes, take a deep breath, and catch the faintest echo of the music in their memory, enough to lower their heart rate and bring a moment of calm. This was the magic that kept the secret concerts going season after season, year after year, the gentle, cumulative effect of peace spreading from the garden outward, like ripples from a stone dropped in still water.
During the day, the garden where the concerts took place appeared completely ordinary. A pleasant backyard with well-tending beds, a small pond, an old willow tree, and the usual assortment of garden ornaments. But if you looked closely, you might notice small signs that hinted at the nighttime magic. The crickets in this garden were slightly larger and greener than elsewhere, with eyes that seemed more observant, more intelligent. They moved with a certain grace, and when they chirped during daylight hours, their songs were particularly melodic, as if practicing for their nighttime performances. The wind in the willow tree always sounded harmonious, even on blustery days, the leaves seeming to whisper in chord clusters rather than random rustles. The pond where the Conductor Frog lived was unusually clear, with water that seemed to hold light in a special way, making it sparkle even on cloudy days. Lilies floated on its surface with perfect symmetry, and dragonflies hovered above it with a poised stillness that felt almost rehearsed. At the center of the pond, on a small lily pad that was slightly larger and greener than the others, one might occasionally glimpse the Conductor Frog himself, taking his daytime rest. He appeared as an ordinary, though particularly handsome, frog, but those with keen perception might notice that his skin held subtle patterns that resembled musical notation when the light hit it just right. Flowers in this garden bloomed with particular enthusiasm, their colors brighter, their scents sweeter, as if nourished by something more than just soil and sun. The roses especially seemed to listen, their faces turned attentively towards certain sounds, their petals arranged in patterns that felt intentional, artistic. Even the vegetables in the kitchen garden at the far end seemed to grow with a certain joy, straighter carrots, happier tomatoes, basil leaves that practically vibrated with flavor and fragrance. Birds that visited the garden sang with extra sweetness, as if they had taken lessons from the wind choir and were practicing their scales. Bees moved from flower to flower with a rhythmic diligence that felt musical, a steady buzzing bass line to the garden's daytime symphony.
children playing in the garden often found themselves speaking more quietly, moving more gently, as if the space itself encouraged calm behavior. Arguments that started elsewhere tended to soften and resolve when people entered this garden, as if the residual peace acted as a balm on frayed nerves. Neighbors visiting each other would often choose to sit in this garden, finding that conversations flowed more easily there, with less tension and more understanding. The garden's magic was subtle but cumulative. Each visit left one slightly more peaceful. Each moment spent there restored a little more balance. And as evening approached on the day of a full moon, a particular hush would fall over the garden earlier than elsewhere, an anticipatory quiet that felt like a stage being prepared for a performance. The crickets would become unusually still and attentive, gathering in the shadows as if receiving last-minute instructions. The wind would settle into a waiting pattern, gentle breaths held in readiness. The pond would become perfectly still, its surface like dark glass waiting to reflect the rising moon. And the conductor frog would vanish from his daytime lily pad, presumably to prepare for his evening's work, donning his star-speckled coat, polishing his baton, reviewing the night's musical program. The garden itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moon to rise and the magic to begin again.
The listeners, though unaware of the concert specifics, felt the approach in their bodies and spirits. As dusk fell on full moon nights, they would find themselves drawn to windows facing the garden, gazing out without knowing why. A sense of pleasant anticipation would settle over them, not excitement, which is too sharp, but a soft, gentle looking forward to that relaxed rather than aroused. Evening routines would take on a particular calm. Baths would be warmer and more soothing. Bedtime teas would taste especially comforting. Pajamas would feel softer against the skin. Children would ask for one more glass of water or one more story with less insistence than usual, as if something was reassuring them that even after lights out, something beautiful awaited. Parents would tuck children in with extra tenderness, lingering a moment longer at bedside, smoothing hair with particular gentleness. Readers would find their books less engaging than usual, their attention drifting to the window, to the gathering dark, to the first stars beginning to appear. Those with worries would find them less gripping, as if the approaching music was already softening the sharp edges of concern. The body's natural melatonin production seemed to synchronize with the approaching concert, making eyelids heavy at just the right time, muscles relaxed as if in rehearsal for deeper rest to come. Pets would settle in their favorite spots earlier than usual, with sighs of particular contentment, as if they too knew what was coming. In houses where people lived alone, the loneliness of evening would be replaced by a sense of gentle companionship, the feeling of being part of something larger, even if alone in a room. As the moon actually began to rise, visible through windows or not, a collective sigh seemed to pass through the neighborhood, a release of the day's final tensions, a surrender to whatever the night would bring. Lights would go out earlier than usual, but not with the harsh finality of exhaustion, rather with the gentle purpose of making space for something else. People in their beds would find themselves arranging pillows with unusual care, creating just the right nest for listening, though they wouldn't have used that word. Breathing would slow even before the music began, as if in unconscious preparation. And then, just as the moon cleared the rooftop of the tallest house on the street, the first shimmer of light would appear in the garden, and the transformation would begin. For those who happened to be looking out their windows at that exact moment, they might catch a glimpse of something magical, a quick sparkle, a movement that wasn't quite ordinary, a sense of gathering purpose in the shadows. But most were already in bed by then, eyes closed or closing, already on the threshold where the concert could work its magic most effectively. The first gentle ribbit from the conductor frog would often blend seamlessly into the last conscious thoughts of the day, like a musical period at the end of a sentence. And then the cricket orchestra would begin, and the journey from wakefulness to dreams would be accompanied by the most gentle, skilled guides imaginable. Each listener experienced the concert slightly differently, according to their needs. Some heard more wind, some more cricket, some a perfect balance. The music seemed to adapt itself to each heart's particular rhythm, each mind's particular pace of letting go.
For the overthinker, the music would be especially repetitive and predictable, soothing the anxious need to anticipate what came next. For the heart-heavy, the music would carry a particular warmth, like a musical embrace that didn't require anything in return. For the physically weary, the deeper notes would resonate more strongly, vibrating through tired muscles like a gentle massage. For the lonely, the wind choir would sound particularly like voices, not quite human, but close enough to feel like companionship. For children, the melodies would be simpler, sweeter, with occasional playful elements that made sleep feel like an adventure rather than a surrender. For the elderly, the music would carry echoes of lullabies from their own childhoods, connecting them across time to all the peaceful nights of a long life. And for everyone, without exception, the music created a sense of safety so profound that the subconscious could finally release its vigilant watch, could finally trust that all was well enough for complete surrender. This was the concert's deepest magic, not just beautiful sounds, but the creation of a container safe enough for the soul to truly rest.
The full moon was not just a timing device for the concerts, but an active participant in its own silent way. Its light provided the stage illumination, a silver-blue glow that was bright enough to see by, but soft enough not to disturb sleep. Moonbeams would sometimes catch the Conductor Frog's baton at particular angles, sending soft shafts of blue light dancing through the garden, adding a visual rhythm to the music. The moon's reflection in the pond served as a kind of additional instrument. When the water was perfectly still, it would reflect not just the moon's shape, but somehow its essence, which interacted with the music in subtle ways. On cloudy nights, when the moon was only partially visible, the concerts would still occur, but the music would be softer, more introspective, as if respecting the moon's shyness. On crystal clear nights, when the moon shone with particular brilliance, the concerts would be slightly more vibrant, the melodies a touch more joyful, as if celebrating the moon's full presence. The moon's phases leading up to the full moon were like rehearsals. Each night the garden would practice a little, the crickets warming up earlier, the winds gathering sooner, the Conductor Frog appearing for longer periods. The night after the full moon, though no formal concert was held, a gentle afterglow would linger, fragments of melodies played by a few dedicated crickets, a single breeze moving through with particular musicality, the Conductor Frog making a brief appearance just to check on things. The moon watched over the concerts with what seemed like maternal attention, its light falling on sleeping faces in the houses, checking that all was peaceful, that the music was doing its work. Sometimes, when a particular sleeper was having unusual difficulty resting, the moon would seem to shine a little more directly through their window, as if coordinating with the music to provide extra comfort. The relationship between the moon and the concert was symbiotic. The music celebrated the moon's fullness, and the moon enabled the music's magic. In the garden, flowers that bloomed at night would open more fully during concerts, as if the combination of moonlight and music was their particular nourishment. Night-blooming jasmine would release its scent in time with certain musical phrases, creating a synesthesia of sound and fragrance that was particularly potent. Moths drawn to moonlight would sometimes dance above the orchestra in graceful patterns that followed the melodies, their wings creating soft percussive whispers that added another subtle layer to the music. Even the shadows in the garden moved differently during concerts, not just as absence of light, but as positive presences that pulsed gently with the rhythm, adding depth and dimension to the experience. The moon, in its silent way, conducted the visual elements of the concert, while the Conductor Frog led the auditory ones, a perfect partnership that resulted in a multi-sensory lullaby. As the night progressed and the moon began its slow descent, the music would follow its path, softening as the moon's angle changed, as if in respectful accompaniment to its journey. By the time the moon touched the western horizon, the concert would be over, its work done, its listeners deep in moon-blessed dreams, and the moon would set with a satisfied glow, knowing it had participated in gifting the neighborhood with a night of exceptional peace.
The secret concerts had been occurring for longer than anyone in the village could remember, certainly longer than any current resident had been alive. Older villagers, when pressed, might recall their grandparents speaking of particularly restful nights, of waking with fragments of beautiful music in their heads, of a sense that their garden was special. The continuity of the concerts was part of their power. They represented something unchanging in a changing world, a reliable comfort that could be counted on as surely as the moon itself waxed and waned. Seasons changed, years passed, children grew up and had children of their own. But every full moon, the music would play, and sleep would be sweet in the houses around the garden. This continuity created an unspoken bond among the villagers, a shared experience they didn't discuss but all participated in, a rhythmic togetherness in the vulnerability of sleep. The garden itself was tended with unconscious reverence by whoever owned it through the years, as if they sensed its importance even without understanding why. The current caretaker, an elderly woman named Ilara, watered the flowers with particular attention, kept the pond clean and clear, and never used pesticides that might harm the crickets. She didn't know about the concerts in any conscious way, but she loved her garden with a depth that went beyond ordinary gardening, and she always slept particularly well on full moon nights. Sometimes, in her dreams, she would see a handsome frog in a starry coat, bowing to her with gratitude, and she would wake smiling, though she couldn't remember why. The crickets in her garden were particularly abundant and healthy, which she attributed to her organic gardening methods, though there was more to it than that. The wind in her willow tree was famous in the neighborhood for its sweet sound, and people would sometimes pause on their walks just to listen to it. Children loved to visit Ilara's garden, drawn by its peaceful atmosphere, and she would often give them small tasks, watering a particular bed or helping to pick vegetables, which they performed with unusual concentration. In this way, the magic maintained itself across generations, the garden cared for by someone who felt its importance, the concerts continuing their gentle work, the villagers receiving their monthly gift of deep rest. And so the circle remained unbroken. The moon rose, the music played, sleep deepened, dreams healed, and a world became a slightly gentler place, one peaceful night at a time. On nights when the world beyond the village seemed particularly troubled, the concerts would play with extra tenderness, as if sending a small but potent wave of peace outward from this one quiet garden. The music couldn't solve the world's problems, but it could soothe the hearts that would face them in the morning, and perhaps that was enough. Perhaps that was more powerful than it seemed. For peace, like music, has a way of spreading, from a sleeping body to a waking mind, from a calm heart to a gentle word, from a kind action to a grateful response. And so the secret concerts, though small and hidden, contributed their note to the symphony of healing the world so desperately needs, a soft, steady, reliable note of comfort in the darkness. As you listen now to this story of the secret concerts, perhaps you can imagine that somewhere, in a garden much like the one described, the Conductor Frog is preparing for tonight's performance.
The moon is rising, silver and serene, above a quiet neighborhood where tired people are finishing their days, preparing for rest. Crickets are gathering their instruments, polishing their tiny violins and cellos, warming up their wings for the night's melodies. The night wind is gathering from the four directions, practicing its harmonies, preparing to sing the world to sleep. And soon, very soon, the first note will sound, a gentle chirp that is both an invitation and a promise. An invitation to let go of the day's burdens, to release the mind's constant chatter, to surrender the body's tensions. A promise of safety, of comfort, of deep rest that renews and restores. The music will play whether you are there to hear it or not. Such is its generous nature, but if you listen with your heart, you might catch an echo of it, wherever you are. For peace, like music, cannot be contained by geography. It travels on night winds, rides on moonbeams, whispers through dreams. And so, as this story ends, imagine that first note sounding now, in your own imagination, a soft, gentle chirp that begins the journey towards sleep. Let your breathing deepen to match its rhythm, in and out, slow and steady. Let your muscles relax,
starting with your toes and feet, moving up through legs and torso, through arms and hands, up to shoulders and neck, finally to face and scalp.